All righty. We might as well go with 2 minutes of extra top trades action. Enrique, good morning, sir.
Good morning from beautiful New Milford, Connecticut.
You are sounding good. What's the temperature? Yesterday it was cold here in the morning. What's the temperature up there?
It's 55 in the morning and 78 in the afternoon at the high. So I think we're pretty much on line with you guys, maybe a couple degrees cooler, but nothing crazy.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll give it an extra minute or so here. Look, Gunner's got a drink. He's drinking his coffee. We're getting rolling.
You guys
So yeah,
having a party without me? Come on
Yeah.
now.
We got Diet Cokes. We got coffees. We got all kinds of stuff. This is good. All
You know
right.
me,
Well,
me and Matt aren't down with the diet, Enrique. We go full strength Coca-Cola around these parts.
wow, that's old school. Well, you guys are skinny. That's the problem. If you were skinnier, maybe I'd do that too.
yeah.
It's not in the cards for me.
Yeah. Gunner does a bunch of running. So,
I've run
um,
some tons. I just haven't, not recently. Broken
yeah,
ankle and all.
that'll slow you down.
Yeah.
All right. Well, while we wait a few minutes here for everyone to pop onto the call, plenty going on. And let's just do a little, I guess, like what's happening in the next few days and weeks. I know politically, we've got the debate tonight.
Oh, I
It
forgot all
has the
about that.
potential to be a nothing burger, but it has the potential to be a big something burger as well. What else do we have in the next couple days and weeks that you guys are looking at?
Well, we have CPI and PPI this week, and then next Wednesday is baby's first rate cut coming in hot. 25 basis points, it's looking like. It's creeping more toward 25 every day now. I think that's pretty much consensus now, wouldn't you say, Enrique? 25 next
Yeah,
week?
I think it's actually it's trading at like 90% plus. So I think it's really going to come down to commentary of what they say off the back of that. But they've been pretty vocal. So I don't know how many surprises.
Yeah. The CME showing it at 73% chance for a 25 cut and then 27% for a 50-point cut, which again, that'll probably end up just moving to the one column, like you're saying too. And that'll probably just go high 90s, 100% there. So that's coming next week. So we've got a decent amount of big market movability, just with some events shaping up. And then we've got wherever the markets are heading in general, right? We've got all sorts of themes happening and playing out. Gunnar, I know, and I guess we're about a minute starting in here, so I'll do a quick intro and we'll kick it off. We've got Gunnar on the call as usual here on Tuesdays. And we're also joined by Enrique. Enrique, we appreciate you tuning in and popping over here for this. You were in the office with me, several weeks ago, but we're glad to have you and your expertise in these markets because they're tricky. We've got a lot of ups and downs, some starts, stops, the summer ending into sort of fall being like coming back, everyone getting back at their trading desk, and it's just been choppy, but there are some decent things setting up, and we want to get your guys' take on that. So I'll sort of play moderator here, and I'll let you guys roll, and whatever you guys talk about, we'll let the conversation go there. So Gunnar, why don't we just kick it off? It's top trades. What do you like? What are you seeing? What's been happening week over week that viewers at home need to know?
Well, it's September, and like you said, you mentioned the word tricky. September is traditionally a pretty tricky month for the markets. It's a month where a lot of volatility can come in. And I know I want to hear from Enrique, first of all, because he's been talking a lot about historically where this September sort of lies after this first week. We had a really rough week, the holiday shortened trading week. And coming into this week, it feels like folks have gotten very bearish very quickly. But Enrique, like, talk to me a little bit about some of these stats. I know you were talking about breadth a lot
Yeah,
on Twitter yesterday. Like, where do you see us, and where do you see the opportunity, and when the markets get difficult like this?
I wrote a note yesterday that was said that I titled "Wait for It." It's absolutely true that September is historically, especially in recent years, been quite difficult. There's reasons for that. I think it has to do with the calendar. People basically coming back. I mean, think about if you're gone most of August, you come back in September, and you've now got to look at your numbers. What happens is, anything that's going to be updated to the negative side is going to get updated in September and not in August because people are actually paying attention. So I think there's real fundamental reasons that happens. and a couple technical reasons. But I guess big picture, what I would say, the trend is your friend. We've got solid economic growth, we've got solid employment, we've got solid unemployment, all these things. But the market, when it trends, it goes in waves. And so, I've seen a lot of people, and I posted some stuff, I sent you some stuff earlier about this too. A lot of people are looking at these waves and saying it's like a head and shoulder top, happening in the market, which is sort of when you get a initial lower high or something like that. And the S&P is almost right there. I think this is all very normal for a fall period, for a bull market, for an election year. And then what I usually look at is I kind of think very short term and then sort of intermediate term. Intermediate term, nothing's changed. Everything's fine. Everything's okay. There's no big lamps out there. Short term, we go in waves. On August 5th, all of a sudden, in 2 weeks, we got great sentiment negative. And then, by the way, in 2 more weeks, we got crazy positive again.
Yeah.
So it kind of has to balance out. And that's kind of, where I fall out. Look at all the sentiment, put call, AAI, bull bear, the oscillators, the advanced decline lines. They're all about halfway to 60% of where, maybe 70% of where I want to get them before I get really excited. But all my intermediate term indicators are all still very bullish and constructive. So what does all that mean? We're starting to pick off little ideas here and there. Like this is when you want to start to put your toes back in to the water, but not yet, your body. So I'm getting more interested, but I think everything all still good. We're just riding this place.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there's a bunch of stuff obviously happening, and investors are definitely kind of in the spin cycle right now. Like you said, it was such a quick drop into the yen panic, and then that historically fast recovery. I think a lot of heads were spinning during that, and now we're going back down again. So it makes sense that people are getting a little bit jittery, especially when you have the most important stock on the market, NVIDIA, not doing well. And a lot of people equate that with the market, and so they say, okay, the market's going down, the market's not looking good, when they're probably really talking about the super hot stocks that were moving higher and pushing us higher during the first 6 months that have stalled out. And so the average investor or the average trader might say, like, oh, this market's getting bad, this market's getting bearish. And then, like you said, the head and shoulders, we were discussing this earlier, people love to quick call these turning points because nobody wants to just sort of play the trend. Everybody's looking for picking a top or picking a bottom when those events are usually pretty rare. And instead, they should be, like you said, like waiting to pounce and waiting for, these.
Tops and bottoms are processing. That's the thing. It's like, the true top or bottom is going to be the result of 6 tops, not just one. And that's kind of when it comes to a head and shoulders, it's very easy to look at that triangle and see one kind of top and be like, oh, we're here. No. You're going to want to see a lot more.
Yeah. And I mean, how many failed head and shoulders have we? I mean, there's billions of them. I mean, it's just part of the uptrend as you get them forming. And sometimes they even start to break down a little bit and then they shoot right back up. And that ends up being a really great buying opportunity. Those failed head and shoulder patterns are very bullish. And it usually, rocket stocks, a lot higher because, again, it all comes down to people getting way too bearish at the exact wrong time, which is like, a more systematic buying the dip approach like Enrique takes. That's a great time to pounce and try to buy once the market really starts ripping higher.
Yeah. Real quick housekeeping. We've got comments open. Anybody on YouTube, go ahead, put questions, comments, tickers. Just want to say hi in there. We got one comment, Enrique. You're coming a little bit quiet for me as well. So I don't know if there's a way to turn up your mic volume or if there's something there. But if you want to do that, and Gunnar, if you want to pull up charts, you can rock and roll. Take us where you want to go. What are you seeing? And I'll let you know, Enrique, if it's quiet or anything. I'll give you another holler on chat or something.
Sounds good.
Well, like we were saying, I mean, this is definitely the spin cycle right here where we have, the big meltdown into early August, the big snapback, and then we're just rolling over again. And, now we're just sort of in the middle of this chop and folks really don't know what to do. There's not a lot of bullish looking super short-term setups just yet. I think there could be, And again, like I'm not trying to predict here. Like it is possible that we start breaking down and we move lower. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we'll eventually catch at some point, either October, maybe later this month. But the fact remains that there's a lot of ugly chop out there, and I think we're going to get some at least intraday volatile back and forth, trendless action, especially with all the data that's coming in this week, especially with the Fed coming up. I think, there's a lot of folks that can't wrap their mind around this market, a lot of folks that have gotten bearish too quickly. I mean, you can see the NASDAQ 100 here. Look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin has looked terrible. This is an ugly chart. Every time it seems to want to try to really push higher, it fails. We saw it fail last week, and again, it was risk assets across the board. Everybody was pretty much selling everything. It wasn't crashy, it wasn't super scary, but it got pretty ugly on Friday, where we had, big portions of the market down big. And there still are a lot of spots where we really haven't seen recovery yet. Yes, we had a decent, kind of back and forth bounce yesterday. But if we look at the stuff that we were talking about as far as rotation trades go, the stuff that I was harping on over the summer, where I was like, maybe this is where the market goes next, stuff like small caps. I mean, you can see how messy this chart has become. Small caps underperforming again today. IWM is red right here. And you can see, I mean, this chart is just a complete disaster on a short-term basis. Longer term, I think we firm up and eventually go higher. But small caps have been an absolute mess trying to play these breakouts right here. We talked about how insane this move was higher, this huge breakout in mid-July that took us up here to these highs. And it looked like it was setting up for another run. This looked like it was flagging and ready to move higher. And then this was that Fed day reversal right here in July. And then the big ugly reaction the next day, gapping lower. And then we're back in this range, retesting 200, come right off those yen panic lows, don't get to the highs, and then we fill that gap, and then guess what? We're right back down again. Friday, IWM was down almost 2%. The Tuesday after Labor Day, it was down 3%. Just an ugly week for small caps. Same thing goes for biotechs. IBB actually doesn't look too bad. It's still up here above this 140 mark. But again, not a lot of traction, still stuck in this wide choppy range. Smaller biotechs, again, just looking at ideas that we thought would be decent rotation trades that looked like they were going to break out over the summer and just couldn't get over the hump. This ran into massive resistance around 102, and now it's back below 100. Looks like maybe another inside day forming right here. So a lot of indecision out there in stuff that was really shaping up and looking like it might want to break out and run over the summer, and we're just back in the chop.
Can I add one thing there too, Greg? While a lot of the high beta stuff looks really ugly, a lot of the lower beta stuff looks awesome. Look at the KBE, the bank index. It's right near its high, right on the support. The KRE, which is the regional bank index, the UTY utilities, which I know these are all interest rate sensitive and perhaps defensive, but I got to tell you, the banks aren't considered defensive. So, if someone wants to say, oh, it's a defensive rotation, well, then pull the banks out of that, because if we were going into a recession, both the high yield index and KRE and KBE would be screaming elsewise. And so that's where, getting back to where we started, I think the intermediate term, outlook here is good. And these are just normal waves, and if anything, the fact that we bounced back so quickly from the August 5th just lets me know the market's healthy. We had 106 fever for 3 hours, but then we got kind of back to normal. This is just the normal oscillations or that you see in a regular stock market.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you are seeing buyers step in here. It's not like we're not. It's some like 1987 scenario where we're just in free fall here. I mean, there's people stepping in and buying at these lower levels. I think more than likely, we could see some more chop, but at the same time, folks aren't just totally selling everything and hitting the deck. And there is stuff that looks good out there too, like Enrique said. I mean, it's not all doom and gloom. There's some sectors that look better than others. I think gold looks great here. We were talking about this last week. It's still very cleanly consolidating up here in the 2,500 range. And earlier this week, we saw palladium start moving higher again, platinum catching, copper. not looking too terrible at the moment. Is it looking better today? It's going back down toward 4, but we had some decent bounces in the precious metals yesterday to start the week. Silver's looking a little bit better. Let's see, put up silver here. Again, not the same look as gold, but trying to catch right here. I think the gold miners could be a decent trade coming up because they've held up so well. I would have thought these would have moved a little bit lower than that, but I think that they could catch somewhere around here and move higher. I'm going to be watching for them to do that just because gold has been so stable, a lot more stable than some of the other commodities out there. We have crude falling off a cliff and everything like that. What do you think about good old PLTR? Speaking of stocks that are looking really good, being added to the S&P 500. Do you think that's a short-term sell maybe on this, or is this thing just going to keep on blasting higher?
You're asking me or Matt, because Matt's been a big.
Are you trying? Yeah. Are you trying to bait me into
Yes,
talking?
I'm trying to
Because
bait
you
you.
did
I'm
it.
trying to get
You
you
got
back.
me. All right. First things first. I have Palantir in my portfolio. It's not going anywhere. I don't have any options on it. I just have the stock. This is great news, right? Long-term hold. I'm not worried about it. Now, I'll let Enrique talk about a trading standpoint. But yeah, you love this stock. You love what you saw yesterday. It keeps going up. I don't think Gunner has it. He's sad. I'm happy. I don't know what else to say. All right. I'm going back on mute. Enrique, what do you think here? Would you trade this? You like this stock?
Well, no, I mean, look, intermediate term, it's obviously a great chart. The trend is your friend. I talk a lot, and when I'm looking up here, guys, I've got my screens here. So I talk a lot about earnings revisions, which is something that is not very easy to find, but I have it here on Bloomberg. The earnings revisions are awesome. So the company has been crushing numbers. Earnings revisions are positive. It's a beautiful chart. Do I have, the history of me at least buying stocks that have gapped up, 7% and buying the next day? It's not my favorite way of making money. It does work sometimes, but I just wait for a little bit of consolidation period. You've got a relative strength index pushing 70 here. It's gonna consolidate. It's most likely going to consolidate by going sideways. So from an intermediate term view, if you like it, I would just wait. If you don't have a position, just build a little bit. But everything else, it's awesome. Like, it's great. And look, there's going to be more government shenanigans. This is the long play on government shenanigans.
Yeah. And
So,
when we've talked about PLTR before, it's obviously a hot ticker. Everybody wants to talk about it. I've always said, this is a really good buy the dips type of stock. It can be a tough trader sometimes. It tends to trade a little janky, and that's fine. The way I'm thinking about this now, though, is a little on the contrarian side, whereas I'm still very bullish on the stock longer term, but getting added to the S&P 500, maybe that's a little bit of a sell the news, like a temporary sell the news event. You come back and revisit it in a couple months and see where it's at, because that seems to be the move lately is S&P inclusion equals maybe sell and get out of the way for a few months and let the thing come back down to earth and consolidate.
well, but the tough thing too about this kind of market where we are right now, the whole market's consolidating. So, this doesn't scream to me the time to be buying aggressively breakouts.
Yeah.
Like, this is where, fade the breakouts and buy the dips kind of thing. And that's what's going to happen for 2, 3, 4 months. And I think that we get, and I wrote about this, I think in yesterday's note, seasonally, and we could talk about whether seasonality is good or not. It's made me a lot of money. October 6th is the day that's the single best day to buy the stock market with 30 or 40 day, forward period. So I think we need to get through the chop. You got to be tactical. You got to be nimble. You got to be smart. But at some point, yeah, I would totally buy Palantir in big size.
Yeah, no need to reach for it up here. And yeah, I know you've talked a lot about that October 6th date. That's a good thing to sort of keep in the back of your mind. Obviously, it's not like set in stone. It's not like a magical day where you can just buy and things will go up, but it's good to have those kind of roadmaps. And we talk about the stuff like this a lot in chat, where we get in these environments where buying breakouts doesn't make sense because they're just not sticking, because people are selling when stocks get up there. And so you have to really understand what kind of market environment you're in, and don't take those type of trades when they're less likely to work. You're going to have a much poorer batting average if you're buying breakouts in this type of environment. You really have to kind of pick your spots in the market. But there are still some stocks that I like, and in a market like this, they really stick out. Like if you have stuff that's ignoring this chop and moving higher, I think that's a pretty good sign that there's some serious buying interest under the name. And one of those that I'm looking at that I'm interested in right now that we talked about earlier this week and that we've talked about last week is Roblox. I know it's kind of a silly idea because it's an online video game metaverse type of play right here, but at the same time, this is the type of name in this environment that I would expect to really be getting hit. If you look at like some of those older techie growth type of names that really got pounded in the bear market of 2022 and that really didn't participate very much in the upside from 2023, a lot of those names have rolled over in the past couple of weeks. But you look at this stock and it's consolidating really nicely here. It tried to go yesterday and it went up and tagged 45 and ran into some sellers. And then today it started to go again and it's coming back down to earth. It's still green for the moment. But this is the type of setup right here where I'm not trying to like buy it right away because I think it could run into some areas where it needs to consolidate again. But creeping up into here, into this $46 range, we're looking at a huge base in this stock right here.
Chart, Greg.
What's that?
Pull up the 5-year chart.
5 years. Yeah.
Look at that. If that gets through 45.50, whoa, no.
Yeah.
You know? And with this stock, you know, the one thing about this, what I love on the technical of this is whether this trades at, and I'm looking at the multiples here. Hold on a second. Let's look at the multiples. They might not be crazy, you know. Yeah, they're pretty. But you know, whether it trades at 6 times revenue or whether it trades at 8 times revenue, I don't think it matters. So technically, if it breaks through that, I think.
Yeah, I like longer, like you get these longer term setups that sort of, and you know, it's looking at trades on multiple time frames. You see these longer term setups in the shorter term, it's really firming up and moving in an orderly fashion toward these breakout zones. This is definitely one that I have my eyes on. And again, you know, fundamentally the story might not have shifted yet, but I think price will lead that sort of thing. So I don't think there's a lot of folks talking about this. I think that people have been very bearish on this stock for a long time. It was a very hot trading stock when it IPO'd in 2021, obviously. It IPO'd at the exact right time, you know, COVID trading and all that. And it had that sort of metaverse hook in the very brief moment in time when metaverse was a big thing before AI kind of just completely stomped on it and took over that theme. But you can see here, I mean, this thing was ripping higher right into when the tech stocks really started rolling over in Q4 of 2021, and then it just hit the skids. I mean, it went from $140 all the way down to $25, and it's been stuck in this ugly range ever since then. Again, this is a weekly chart. I bring up the daily look, very similar, you know, getting tighter up above 45. If this thing can hold above 45 and get into the 46s, I think it can really rip, and it can be a great longer term trade from there. It can be a great shorter term trade. This stock will definitely be in play.
Yeah, just FYI, I mean, I bought this one last week because I just started looking at it, and it's one of those ones. This is not a trader for me. It's another one of these like longer term. Like you look at that chart, you're just like, this is a decent setup. You got maybe 25% downside with a stop, and then the upside is, well, 3 or 4x.
Another name, a bigger one that I think is worth keeping in mind right now is
This is another one I hold. What are we doing? This is just my long-term portfolio here. I love this.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess we're just going over like this is Matt's favorite stocks. What did you change the name of the
I wish I could trade them. I can't. It's been tough to trade any of these things on options, though. It's
Special
just,
episode. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but Matt, you and I were talking about this one, and you know, I was talking about it back here as in late June as a potential breakout, and it broke out hard, and now is obviously retested and you know sort of bounced back off this zone. It's been sloppy, obviously, and this is the yen panic. This dip here into the 180s and then snapped right back. Obviously, had a really ugly day, down 8% on Friday when people were just dumping stuff, but it's clawing its way back right here. Obviously has some work to do, but I think this has potential to run into that into the robo-taxi event, which I believe now is scheduled for what, mid-October, Matt?
Yeah, that's the 10th, I think. 10th of October, full self-driving day. And again, that's just another one that fundamentally speaking, I saw someone in the comments said fundamental Matt is back or whatever,
Fundamental
which
match.
is true. But fundamental Matt, I just look at that like no other company out there has this advantage. It's like Uber. Uber kind of came up, no one actually knew what it was. It did all the stuff, got all these cars in all these cities, and now, like, whether it's good or not now, who knows? But Tesla's doing the same thing with full self-driving. People in America don't realize what's happening right now. There are tons and tons and tons and millions of miles that are getting driven around with no one touching a wheel. And Elon is behind the whole thing, and they're just getting data on it. It is going to be a super powerful prime mover advantage that could make them a lot of money. Whether or not it happens, who knows? But no one else is doing it. So if you
Well,
want full
I think
self-driving, there's only one place to do it, and there's going to be a big day just talking about full self-driving on October 10th. That's a nice setup in between now and then.
Well, I think it's going to come down between Waymo, which is Google, and Tesla, and that's going to be the big battle right there. And
But which one's a car company?
well, yeah, exactly. I think it's more about the software is what it comes down to. So I think there's going to be a big argument, as to which one of those is going to come out on top. But either way, I think, and I don't have an opinion on that. I'm not really sure, but I do think that this is the type of event where you can get some selling in, or you can get some buying up into it. Maybe it's a sell the news type event. I don't know, but I think from a tactical perspective, we could be in a situation where, if Tesla really does begin to firm up a little bit more here, I think it's still kind of a messy chart, but at the same time, it's a much different look than the other Mag 7 stocks. I think it has the potential to potentially run into an event like that. And I don't think I would hold through that. I think I would think more tactically and say, like, okay, I'm going for a quick trade, maybe from like 230 to, 260, 270. If it gets on the cusp of that, I think that would be ideal, as a short-term tactical play into that full self-driving robo-taxi event, whatever you have. I mean, I like a good controversial stock, and it doesn't get much more controversial than like Elon Musk right now. I think he just likes to be in the spotlight and causing trouble, and that sort of thing. And that can work to his favor or against him. But either way, it's getting eyeballs on it. And obviously, we're dealing with a cult stock here. People either love it or hate it. I don't think there's a lot of people who are neutral on Tesla. So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. But tactically, yeah, I think that you can possibly squeeze a decent upside trade out of that in this type of environment, if it does decide to go.
One other nice thing about the trade, Greg, sorry to interrupt,
No,
is they don't report until October 18th. So the problem with Tesla hasn't been that Tesla isn't friggin' awesome. The problem is earnings revisions. They've just had negative earnings revisions for 2 years. That's cracked the stock down. And so, I that's actually a beautiful setup that you've got like a big catalyst, you got a nice chart, it's outperforming everything else, people are seeing strength, and you can buy it and just be sure as heck to sell before those earnings, because it's just what the stock has done. It's like whack-a-mole, is like every time in between earnings it seems to rally because people, the hope lives, and then he reports a number that kind of puts a little bit more reality to the hope. It's not terrible numbers, like going out or anything. But
I think that's very typical of like, your cultish stock. It's like nothing's worse than reality. You get hit with reality every 3 months, and it's kind of a bummer. But then you can go back to like dreaming about, like flying robo taxis for the next 3 months and bid the thing back up. But yeah, I mean, like Matt, what else in your portfolio do we need to hit before we move on to the?
That's basically it. Other than that, it's just Zoom. I had when we should bring this up because the last time Enrique was on the call, we could point to it on the Chipotle chart.
Oh yeah,
I bought Chipotle around that time. It was like after the call or sometime because it's like, oh, I love Chipotle personally, and
it was right here.
It looked decent, so I did all my own research on it. Yeah, it's right on that.
Oh, it was right here. It was this big one right here.
No, it's down in that shadow, dude. Go down to 48. It's way down there. Whoop. Yep, right in there.
It was way down here. Yeah.
Yeah. That was right when we were live on a Top Trades call, and Enrique said, "Hey, I really like this stock right here. It's, for XYZ reasons, right, Enrique?" So I like that one. I had it, and then I sold it. The only other thing I have is Zoom.
Well, I mean, Zoom is worth talking about too. I haven't, now, full disclosure, I haven't looked at the trash ARK stocks in a while because the market's turned south, and I know what happens when it does. And yeah, so
look at that thing.
Yeah, so you have a case here of everybody hates this stock, can't do anything right, and then it posts not terrible earnings, and not terrible is huge for a company like this. Rockets straight up, and now it's gone straight down since August 28th. Hasn't had enough day, just slowly leaking.
Can I tell you one funny thing about Zoom though? is you look at this and I was like, oh my gosh, the stock must have gone from like 30 to 80. It went from 60 to 70. It's actually a low ball. This is like trading like an insurance stock at this point. Like that's if I would have told you because I saw this chart and I'm like, oh my god, it must have been like a $30. Oh, it's like $6.
Yeah. Yeah, the reaction could have been a lot better. And obviously, I mean, the further back you go, still very broken chart here.
Yeah.
It really can't catch a bid in the 70s right here. It gets sold every time. So it does have work to do. I mean, but I think last time we talked about this, we're all kind of in agreement that this is not a zero. It's going to get bought by somebody eventually. It's not going to go anywhere. I think it's going to be a decent play, but I mean, I really don't know what to do with it as it's just sort of like leaking lower back into
Yeah, I
that.
don't like the billions of red days in a row.
Yeah, not a big, not
Look,
a big
Zoom's the kind of stock you put in your portfolio, and I'm not saying whether you should, but like you basically lose a little, make a little, lose a little, make a little in like a $10 range, and you wake up one day the Microsoft thing at 87.25,
yeah.
and you made 15%. I don't know that it's really worth it for the 15%. You could have used the capital elsewhere, and it's a lot of brain damage in the interview period. But and look, something could change with Zoom. It could get worse, it could get better. But for right now, that's where it's sits. You know,
Yeah, it's definitely in the spin cycle. Yeah,
Yeah.
and like you said, I mean, like I would actually like it better if it was looking worse, to be honest with you. But being here in no man's land in like the mid 60s, yeah, you're right. Like, what if it gets a buyout offer for like 85, and you're like, okay, great. Like,
That's what's gonna happen. It's gonna zing me, and Enrique is gonna be right. The only other stock I forgot, this is a big position I hold is in Credo, CRDO. I hold that one.
I haven't looked at that one. Since we're doing your whole portfolio, that's kind
Yeah,
of
well,
too. I mean, it is catching today. It's up 4%, but I mean, looks like a tough trader to make since I mean, it's all over the place with this big
yeah, I
gap.
don't like that March 2023 action. Look at
Yeah,
this creeping
yeah. I
up
mean,
and
look at
then
this. This is a messy one. But yeah, I mean, some stocks are like that. You know, they all have different personalities. This would be a tough one to really catch on a trade right here, and it's got this big, huge gap right here. I kind of mark stuff like this as too hard, and then I kind of move on to something that might look a little better. It's just you can see a chart like this, and you're like, man, I don't even know what to do with it.
yeah.
But like back to like your Zoom theme, like we have like these other like possible zeros like Peloton and kind of doing the same thing where around the same time too, Peloton releases earnings that again aren't awful, and they were up much bigger than Zoom was, up at least 35% on the day the day after reporting earnings. Can't get over $5, and that might just be market conditions. It might be that this is just back in the chop, but at the same time, like I think this one's kind of worth watching. Maybe they get their act together. I'm not sure. I think like judging by what we've discussed, and I'm going to put on my fundamental mad hat right here. I don't usually wear it, but Peloton's more likely to be a zero to me than Zoom. But at the same time, I think someone else could figure out something to do with this. I remember back in the day when this was a hot stock, everybody was talking about, oh, Apple will buy it. And it's like, I don't know. Apple really doesn't buy things. Do they really want to get in that space? In the post-COVID world where we're, back to quote unquote normal, I think this is kind of a tough sell at the moment. I think people are back in gyms and it's becoming a nichier product by the day. That's my fundamental take on Peloton. My purely technical take is it can't hold $5. If it can't hold $5, then I don't want it. So
can I throw one thing into the room too that I think is pretty interesting that I'm very intrigued by? Fits a little bit more, my strategy. I actually think the semiconductors are all interesting here. You can look at Broadcom, Nvidia, and I'll use a little fundamental hat because I do quite a bit of fundamental too. Look, I am with a 12-month, 18-month view. I'm actually quite concerned about it. I've traded semiconductors for 25 years, and they're cyclical. And what happens is when people need more semiconductors, they build more semiconductor manufacturing capacity, and then people's needs are satisfied. Then you've got too many. But none of that is happening anytime soon. These stocks, we can argue. I'm just going to go to my chart that I'm looking at. You could argue that head and shoulders. I could argue it's also holding the uptrend, right around the 100-day. And so I am and y'all can tell this by like every time I talk about anything, I'm about earning momentum. Is the company going to be the company? And I'm going to tell you something. These companies are going to beat these numbers in this next quarter. Like the earnings momentum is very much like stock momentum. If the stock's been going up consistently in a well defined trend, earnings momentum is probably even more powerful in that. It doesn't reverse on a the real world doesn't. Stocks can change on a in a moment. The real world, unless it's like a friggin' hurricane or tsunami, doesn't change. And so I think there's a really interesting trade. Nvidia, Broadcom. We made a bunch of money recently. Something called Stoxel. That's the direction date semiconductor gold 3 times share class. It's a so again. I don't know how much we've spoken about these 3 times levered daily ETFs. They're very dangerous. They need to be used tactically. But if you get them right, to really time it, which can be, we do it all the time. It can make a ton of money, and I kind of really like Stoxel here. Like, ask me if what semiconductor is going to be higher or lower by year end. I feel damn good about. I know the earnings are going to be better. They're going to continue to be. And so to me, I think that's very intriguing, and that's not making a small amount of money. Like these stocks, Zoom went up, that chart like spiked, and you made 6% on your money. Stoxel works, it's going to go from 27 to 50 by year end. And so this is the way that you sometimes, and like an option, and I'll leave with this one thing, with options, it's great. You can make 300, 500, 1,000% on the money, but you also can lose it all, in 47 days. These are kind of like the junior league of that. I don't know that you're not going to make 1,000% stocks, but you're not going to lose all of it too. Because Nvidia's not going away. Broadcom's not going away. These companies are in great position. So I think that's a very interesting group. And right now, you say semiconductor, and people are like, I can't touch semiconductors. I'm like, okay, crushing earnings, and people kind of hate it. Like I'm very.
Yeah, I like that. It's like people got really hooked on it like it was a drug because they just kept on going straight up earlier in the year. And now that they're not going straight up anymore, people don't want anything to do with them, and they're like repulsed by them. But you look at the charts like this, and I have AVGO pulled up right here. I have Broadcom, and we're at a spot where you can take a decent hack at something like this, and it's a great risk reward area. You know where you're going to be wrong if this thing continues to break down. If you really like on the long side here, with like a stop maybe down here and like below 130 or something. I mean, it's a decent look. And again, like I think it would be silly to assume that this is a top in the semis. Like Enrique said, I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they're still going to be making money. Nvidia hasn't gone anywhere essentially now since May. So we've had a whole summer of Nvidia chop. I think that's pretty standard when it comes to a big breakout like this. This was, I mean, back before the split, this was like what, $500, this big $500 breakout that was right here that happened right at New Year's. And then the thing just went straight up, consolidated a little bit, and then just blew off right here. I mean, yeah, let the thing rest. I mean, it deserves to have a little bit of a break right in here. I mean, there's no reason to get super bearish Nvidia, but that's how people are going to be talking about these again, because they were just hooked on those gains. And we can use that to our advantage, obviously. I mean, like, I would say that, like, if we had to lay down money on just a gentleman's bet right now, I would be very hard pressed to take the bet that, like, 9 months from now, these stocks are going to be lower. I think they're going to be higher. I think history says, big moves like this after some consolidations, they're probably going to end up higher. I think it would be foolish to think otherwise at this point. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's a great place to just keep an eye on for now and see where these little bounces here take us, see where support is, see which ones start moving again. Maybe these are really strong buys in mid-October and we get a nice melt up, into the strongest time, of the year, November, December, when the market just flies. I mean, people are going to go back to what's been working, and what's been working has obviously been NVIDIA, the semis. Enrique mentioned leveraged ETFs. This is a SOX L, the one he was talking about. 3x semiconductor bull, obviously not a buy and hold type of play, but if you can nail these things at these turning points right here, you can get these huge rallies, make a lot of money very quickly, like Enrique says.
All right, Enrique, you want to do another sound check? I see Enrique's in the chat. He's in the YouTube chat. He's changing microphones.
Yeah. Is this any better? I have a normal video set up, but this morning I was having issues. Is this
I
better?
think that's better. Yeah, I think that just sounds, it's a little bit louder, and yeah, it might have just been like the mic wasn't picking up here and there on a few
Yeah, yeah,
words
yeah.
here and there. So, but yeah, that one
All
sounds
good.
better.
Okay, good.
Hey, Matt.
Uh,
So
yeah.
Ian mentioned this to me a little while ago. Your three themes from last week uh that have all been right as far as like directionally. So what was it? Crude going lower, weed stocks going lower, and semis going
Semis.
lower short term.
They're all commodities. They're free, basically. Crude coming out of the ground, free. Pot, it's literally weed, free. Semiconductors, made too many of them. Like, I don't know. They're going, I think Enrique's saying the same thing I am, that at some point they are a commodity. Again, Nvidia, like they're making huge margins, but someone's gonna come get them at some point. They've got a lead, they're gonna get caught, and then all of a sudden there will be a decent amount of these things out there.
Is our magic buyer going to come in the mid 60s here and start buying crude? Is it going to happen again, or are we just going to?
Well, I mean, the U.S. government, I mean, has been very like the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which, by the way, isn't that material, but they've come in and been buying. They've actually, the one thing the government's probably done well in the last 3 years is they've actually traded crude pretty well. Is they've been buying down here, and the one thing I'd say about crude, what I would never ever short this here, and the reason is you're always, when you're long crude, you're long the chaos option. Is, one tactical nuke goes off somewhere and this thing's going to 75, 80, 90, in a nanosecond. So historically, I've actually done very well bottom fishing with this. And let me be careful with that, but because I want to say something. Bottom fishing with the stocks can go to zero. Oil ain't going to zero. Mind you, it did it once. I know that was a huge buying opportunity. But I think, I'm starting to get interested in actually buying oil. So
Yeah, I mean the things we've talked about before, Matt. It's like we put this on a weekly, and every time crude gets down, whoa, what happened here?
There it is. That's what Enrique was talking about. They can't go free, except for that one time where it was like they were paying.
Ruined my chart. But it's every time we get down here, like lately, I mean, after this was post free oil back in the COVID days, but every time we get down here under 70, eventually somebody steps in before it gets a little too out of hand. So it does feel like an area where it'd be like, okay, maybe this is going to turn at some point.
Yeah, I'm not at this point, week over week. I'm not saying like this isn't somewhere where I'm trading. I'm like, oh, I want to see this thing go even lower, because it's just not super probable. Like it's just kind of at the bottom where it's going to be anyway. Because you get to $40, you can't really get U.S. oil for $40 that's profitable. 50s you can get profitable. 60, that's about it. So it's like
you're running supply demand where it's gonna.
Yeah, but there's a theme. There's a theme here: copper and oil and nickel and all that. So gold looks great, and you mentioned platinum, palladium, and semiconductors a little different. There's a theme. These are what people are looking through on the ISM, the industrial manufacturing data. They're saying we're slowing down. There's a risk of recession, and that's what's happening. These are all related. But here, so look, these all come down to, away from a trade. I actually kind of really like oil as a bounce here. You got two camps. Are we soft landing or are we hard landing?
Right.
And make your bets. And if you think we're soft landing, I think these are great. These are very, very interesting trades. Oil ain't going to zero. If we're hard landing, well, then all bets are off. Just buy that gold. Is kind of the scenario. But again, I want to say something. For trading, you can use that. You just have to understand what the backdrop is happening here, right? Because if you went into one of these trades and you said, I'm buying it on the technicals, but you don't understand that this is the actual narrative driving the price, you don't want to be surprised by something else. And it gets back to what we were talking about, some of the macroeconomic data and all that.
You heard it here first. Enrique's predicting the biggest crash ever.
I put that on Twitter Sunday night. I'm like, Black Monday, everyone.
Yeah, of course.
We will. I'll keep this real short, and hopefully we don't go off on a tangent. But you can see something like we've got the debate tonight. the most outlandish thing or the biggest outlier would be if Kamala just makes Trump look stupid. I don't think that's going to happen, but if that somehow happens, I think the market's a hell of a sell-off because it becomes the biggest question mark in between now and November that we've had in a while. Whereas if Trump, I think that's where the market, when Trump won that debate, markets skied up. When the assassination attempt happened, still stayed high because they're like, Trump's going to crush Biden. Then all of a sudden, you got all this Kamala. People were like, uh-oh, I don't know who's going to win. I think it's sort of bottomed out. You had the peak Kamala world. Now people are like, all right, I think Trump's going to win. So if Trump has a strong debate, I think the markets really like that. And it just, that could maybe overtake the hard landing, soft landing narrative and becomes, oh, Trump is going to do X, Y, and Z, and we're pretty sure he's going to win now. So let's place some bets. And the market likes that certainty.
The one thing that gave me a chuckle yesterday watching both these candidates was the Trump coming out and talking about cannabis stocks and about legalization, because it just seems like both candidates are doing whatever they can. It's like a birthday party right now. They're like, what can I give the voters? Student loans gone, free cannabis. It's pandering is, I think, the technical term for it. But when I heard the Trump cannabis thing, and Kamala, I think, has been doing that basically since the thing. But I agree with you. I'll actually say something different, or a little bit of a different of what you just said. The narrative going into prior to Kamala getting, basically taking over the nomination was that she was word salads that she couldn't and that was the narrative on both sides. That wasn't just Fox News. I think that was the general. If we come out and she does just fine, I think we're kind of in a middle ground. If we come out and Trump trips over himself, which Trump's going to say some crazy shit. We all know that. And he always does. But he usually doesn't trip over himself. That's not a thing. He says crazy, weird stuff, but he doesn't stumble. That could happen. But then also we could get a Kamala word salad. She goes to answer something and just essentially she just spoke for 2 minutes. I don't know what the hell she just said. So it definitely could change the tone a bit, in my opinion. And I usually don't feel that way about a debate.
The only thing I'm really thinking about the debate is I think it's possible. First of all, I think it's very possible that the expectations are so low for Kamala that she outperforms for whatever the bar is, whatever that means, and then it's sort of a nothing burger maybe. And we don't have any certainty, any more clarity on the election. It still feels very much like a toss-up, at least in the mainstream media. But also Trump's has inserted himself as a Bitcoin guy. If Trump does really well or Trump does really poorly, or it's perceived that way after the debate, are we going to get a big move one way or the other in crypto? That's the really only thing that's sticking with me. And maybe that's the wrong way to think about it. Maybe that's a total nothing burger too. But I feel like since the Democratic Party has sort of positioned themselves as an adversary of crypto, that the crypto traders or crypto investors have all moved toward the Trump camp, and if he does well, they feel like it's going to take the lid off of any type of regulation or situation with crypto. So
I'll throw one more in there, is that Trump, to me, seems, him and Elon Musk, I think they're talking every night. It feels like it. Trump, to me, we got cannabis, we got Bitcoin. How about social media? Social media stocks have been getting their ass kicked too. So now all of a sudden, Trump is basically the Elon Musk candidate. To take what Elon Musk is for, and Trump's for that. So, hey, I don't even know Tesla. I'm not saying, but I think you could get, Google's got crushed, all the social media. But let me say one last thing. I do think that in general, price is truth in the markets. I look at individual charts. I look at individual setups. I look at what's going on at Chipotle is a perfect example. Chipotle doesn't care about Trump, and Chipotle doesn't care about inflation. Yes, it could care momentarily, but you find those great setups. So I ultimately don't think either one of those things is going to really change the course of any of the great setups that Greg and I are looking to identify.
Yeah, and I will make a promise to everyone that I will still eat more than one Chipotle meal per week, no matter who wins the election. You can put that down, book that for me.
Yeah. I'll say one more thing. This is it, my little prediction. I think in the first debate, and this never happened in Trump's first 4 years, and when he was running for president the first time, the first debate, it was noticeable that he took a different tact. He's like, I'm not going to come out and be like almost seemingly crazy or like like off the cuff and
Not
blunt.
going to be overly aggressive.
He did not do that.
Very
So
aggressive.
if
Yeah.
whoever had his ear then, if they have his ear again, and he could do something, I think everyone kind of knows. I think everything's going this way. Like the country's in a shitty spot. The last 4 years have been a train wreck. Inflation's been a mess. Kamala's not qualified. All these different things. I think he comes in, he says a few things that just make him look like the adult in the room and not like a bully. And all of a sudden, that just flips everything. I think NASDAQ's up 2% tomorrow, and I think we start rolling.
I mean, I think he's made mention, at least like because he's back more on social media now. I think he made mention of the fact that and this might be a red herring, but he said, or somebody said who was connected to him said that he was going to do a very similar thing against Kamala, where he was going to kind of let her dig her hole or whatever. He was going to lay back and not talk as much. We'll have to see if that's true. But like he did exercise for Trump, he exercised some pretty amazing restraint during the first debate over the summer. So we'll see if we can keep it up for the second one. I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know what tactics like Harris is.
Who knows?
Who has any idea, because she won't talk to the media, so we don't even really know what her platform is, and we're kind of going into this whole thing blind. So we'll see what comes out of it.
A lot of eyeballs on that thing tonight. So if you're not, I don't even know what time it is. Like 9? What time? Whatever.
I don't know.
Tune in. It'll be interesting. That will be, there's Monday Night Football and Tuesday night debate. So here we go.
You gotta
All
watch.
right, Gunner.
You gotta watch the debates like I watch them. You just sort of keep your Twitter feed up and then just watch the funny clips that come in, and then you don't have to sit through all the other garbage.
Well, and you watch the Bitcoin chart because none of the other markets are open. Bitcoin is like boop, 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 boop,
Bitcoin,
boop.
Twitter. That's all you need right there.
Yeah. All right, Gunner. You and Enrique, we got 10 minutes left. Let's talk setups that you like, trades, any sectors that we didn't talk about. We had some comments looking into maybe gold if we want to talk gold. What else? What else are you guys seeing?
Well, like I said earlier, I mean, like, I think we're kind of light on the breakout setups that I like right now, and that's because of the market that we're in. I have the couple of names that I'm really honing in on with like stuff like Roblox, like Tesla. I got to be patient here and kind of let the market come to me. Maybe take some different types of trades as they come along right here. We've been talking about like maybe some more asymmetrical stuff that won't be as affected by the market. I mean, luckily we're still involved in eBay right now, and for whatever reason, eBay doesn't care whatever happens in the stock market. It just sort of creeps higher. I don't know what's going on with this stock, but like I don't mind being in it right now because it just goes up and to the right. So I'll take that in a market like this, find stuff like this. It's not the fastest mover in the world, obviously. It's been kind of a slow rally for us right here, but it's working in our favor, and that's good enough for me. But yeah, in this type of environment, like Enrique said, like the high beta names, that's not the stuff that's popping right now. So we have to sort of shift our focus and just sort of go with the flow and see what works and let the market come to us. What do you got, Enrique?
Well, look, we talked about Chipotle. I friggin' love that Chipotle trade. Like I liked it before the guy resigned.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting. This is just a classic. What my strategy is. Companies that are winners have a long-term history of winning, of growing earnings, beating numbers, positive revisions, upward stock charts, and then you wait and you look for material weakness off of one thing or the other, and you take advantage of it. And I'll throw one more in that we haven't talked about, but because I want to bring in, we talk about low beta versus high beta. One low beta name that's made my radar screen recently is McKesson, MCK. McKesson, this is the number 1 or 2 drug distributor in the S&P 500. This is actually one of the top 6 companies in terms of in terms of revenue. And if you were to look at the earnings revisions and the earnings reliability of these companies, so they basically are the ones who provide all the drugs to the pharmacies, the doctors, et cetera. They reported back in August, and they basically had a sales number missed by like 1%. And then at a conference last week, they brought down the near-term quarter guide, but they kept the full year guide. I've been following McKesson for 25 years. They are going to hit that full year guide. And when they hit that full year guide, I'm going to tell you, this stock is going to be higher than where it is right now. And this is as defensive as it gets. Like, this is literally drug distribution. So, it doesn't always have to be, there's a lot of opportunities that are idiosyncratic. To me, this has really nothing to do with the market, but let's talk about it. We've talked about a lot of, Chipotle maybe is a higher beta name. Some of the other stuff we talk about. Here's a low beta name that's idiosyncratic. Like they don't really need to do anything. And I think people are going to rotate into the name, if we believe in defensive rotation. So I'd say Chipotle and McKesson are the two that I really like right here.
Yeah, absolutely slammed right there. I don't know what happened right here.
Well, that's the first one was they missed revenue by 1% and blew away the number. Yeah. The first one was the gap down. And then the most recent one was at a conference. They said, I'm going to get the numbers wrong. It's going to be 682 instead of 701. Which McKesson's, I followed this thing for decades. It happens all the time. But again, if we could pull up the chart of earnings revisions, they're going to beat these numbers. So,
yeah, it's a good one. And like you said, like in a market like this is a great play to keep an eye on. When you have like the high beta stuff like not working, when you have breakouts not sticking, you have a stock like this where like if we erase this last part of the chart right here, all this thing does is just chug higher. And you get a free pass, you get a free reset here. Anybody who missed it along here and was like, oh man, I wish I could buy it at 520, they're scared to buy it right here, but look what you got. You got a nice low beta name that can really rock and roll again once people start buying.
Yeah, it's just going to take time.
All right. Well, if we don't have anything else, Gunnar, I'll give you the last word if you've got anything else that we want to cover that's week over week. The only other thing I'll say, housekeeping notes, is Enrique, one thing, maybe we could ask you to do it. For anyone that's in the trading desk, Enrique's going to be in there more. He's been in the chat, obviously. He's in the chat on the YouTube right now. But for Gunnar's paid product, Enrique's going to be in that chat more often. And I think what we're going to start doing is posting some of Enrique's stuff in the blog as well. Enrique, one of the things that we could use, if you've got like 2 or 3 names that you like, because I've talked to you several times now in the earnings revision concept, I hear it all the time, loud and clear, that's one of your main things that you lean on. I'd love to know sort of like anything, 2 or 3 names that maybe you haven't brought up or anything that have that sort of a setup. And then some of the folks, we haven't ever shared a screen or shown a picture, I think, of that earnings revisions stuff that you're looking at from Bloomberg. So if you got a couple, that would be something that would be cool for the trading desk members. We send it in, we could put that in the blog. Gunnar, maybe post that picture just so people can see what that looks like, because that seems like it's a very powerful setup.
Tomorrow I'll send you. So Gunnar, I'll send you maybe Chipotle and McKesson, and people can see exactly what I'm talking about in terms of the earnings revisions.
Nice. Awesome. All right, Gunnar, I'll give you the last word. What's happening? What do we need to know in between now and next week?
I would say don't rush into anything right here. Obviously this market's working through something. It's choppy out there. We got some data coming in tomorrow, Thursday. We got the Fed coming up Wednesday. We'll see if we get a debate ripper, like Matt says, might or might not happen tomorrow. That'll be interesting to see. Happening? Okay. We'll talk about it next week. That's the first thing we should talk about next week then, is whether or not we got that debate rip. I'm staying debate agnostic right now, as much as I can. So we'll see what comes down the pipe. But for now, I think this is a great time to sort of take a step back, reassess, see what different setups are out there, what might be working, some stuff that's holding up a little bit better. The stuff that holds up better during these little downdrafts is sometimes the stuff that becomes, your next market leader. So it's always a good idea to keep an eye on those type of charts. And we'll be going over more of those, as the week progresses in the chat.
Awesome. Enrique, thanks for hanging out with us today. We appreciate it. You got a lot of great insight, a lot of good ideas. So we'll be staying tuned to what we're posting in the trading desk there. Thanks, Gunnar. And thanks everyone for in the chat. We didn't get to too many tickers, but we covered a lot of those sectors that we're looking at. And we'll be covering those in the daily chats and next week in top trades. See y'all. Thanks for tuning in.
See you.